pollution while maximizing the efficiency of your HVAC system. Don't let it break down like me. It cost me a fortune. What a headache that was. Right now, you can save 5% when you set up auto delivery, so you never need to think about air filters again. Save money. Save time. Breathe better with filterby.com. That's filterbuy.com. Filterby.com. Thanks for supporting them, by the way. By the way, there's no promo code for them. But trust me, folks, they know. Thank you to everyone who emails me. It's filterbybuy.com. But they know it's coming from our audience. Believe me, they are very happy. So we appreciate you supporting filterby.com. Okay. Story in IJ Review I will put up at the show notes today. If you missed it, you got to read it. It's a great one about the Facebook, their vice president of advertising. I don't know this guy's politics. I personally don't care what his politics are, but it's a pretty amazing story. Hold on one second here. Oh, okay. Sorry, getting text during the show, as always. The Facebook VP of advertising this guy's admitted, and I'll put, you can read his exact quote, that most of the advertising, Joe, that the Russians paid for was done, listen to this, folks, after the election. This is their VP of advertising. This is not some local backbencher in Facebook. Now, he puts up a pretty dispositive statement that, listen, I get that this doesn't correspond with the media Trump narrative. This is him saying this kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the Facebook ads, so basically we have Russian Facebook trolls paid for advertisings after the election. Folks, how can you collude to win an election with the Russians, to get information hacked into the DNC, if the DNC, number one, wasn't hacked by the Russians, and number two, the Facebook advertising you paid for, supposedly to advance the Trump cause, was done after the election?
Yeah, it's kind of tough.
It's kind of tough to...
Yeah.
That's all about you. Joe's like shaking his head. Yeah, I don't... This does not require even an audience ombudsman. This is the VP of advertising, folks. I'm going to put the article up at IJ because it's really damning. And I don't think this, and by the way, of course, liberals are going after him because as I opened up the show, liberals are insane. Not all of you, but the liberals absolutely committed to this collusion fairy tale. You're nuts. You've been driven mad. There's no amount of evidence that can be produced to get you off this laser sight that you believe Trump colluded with the Russians to win the election, despite the fact that you have absolutely no evidence. Not a scintilla of evidence is going to be produced because it didn't happen. You will continue to go. And by the way, you may very well lose the midterm elections because of it. Because as the tax cuts are rolling in and other legislative priorities are moving forward on the GOP side, you guys are obsessed with this dead narrative. Facebook VP himself, most of the spending was after the election. Well, how did you win an election if the spending was after the election due to the spending?
I hadn't heard that, by the way. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. A lot of people haven't because, of course, the media should be covering this on the front page. Facebook VP of advertising admits most of the Trump spending, anti-and pro, by the way. Yes, anti-and pro Trump, was done after the election. It's alleged the spending was done to alter the results of the same election. It doesn't make sense. Those two things can't be true. All right. One more just quick wrap up. I'm sorry. I know I spent a lot of time in this today, folks, but it's a really important story. And I just feel like, I kind of lost it a little bit on Fox and Friends this weekend. I mean, lost it, like not lost my mind or anything. But I just feel like we're losing the whole country, folks. I feel like the Republic is under very sincere, grave attacks by police staters on the left and right, and by Russians who are absolutely using these police staters on the left and right and these hyper-partisans to cover up their tracks, and nobody wants to tell the truth. I tweeted out a tweet. Can't we all agree? All right, the Russians attacked us and have been attacking our democracy. They have been forever. They did it to cause chaos.
Right.
But do you understand, Joe, that the chaos they caused is now being advanced by partisans, not the Russians?
Yeah, they're taking advantage of it, sure.
They're taking advantage of it. The Russians love this. Finally, they're moving on to the obstruction of justice narrative. I'm not going to spend too much time, but Andy McCarthy has another great piece I'll put up at the show notes talking about how this obstruction of justice narrative it's a dead end, folks. It's a dead end. You can't obstruct justice for things he did legally. If they're going to say, oh, he obstructed justice because he fired the FBI director. He fired the FBI director because the FBI director wouldn't admit that the FBI director told him he wasn't under investigation. This may be the first time in human history a guy's charged with obstructing justice for obstructing justice into an investigation that the justice distributors of justice supposedly told him wasn't his. Does that make sense? That Comey wouldn't say publicly that Trump wasn't under investigation, despite the fact that he told Trump that. It annoyed Trump.
Yeah.
Trump is perfectly within his constitutional authority to get rid of him. And by the way, the Flynn thing is a dead end because nothing stopped him from prosecuting Flynn. How you can obstruct justice in some kind of corrupt way when he just said, hey, can we let this Flynn thing go when the Flynn thing wasn't let go is bizarre. Besides, he has prosecutorial discretion anyway. All right. One final thing I want to spend a few minutes on. Folks, listen, I work at NRA TV. I don't work for the NRA. I work for NRA TV in a production company. I'm just telling you that as disclosure, so you understand. I wrote on my Twitter and I say it everywhere else. My opinions are mine. I'm not under contract anywhere to lobby or advance anyone else's opinions. I want to be absolutely crystal clear with you. I do not work for them because they pay me to say something. They don't. They pay me for my opinions. We clear? Mm-hmm. I'm not paid for their opinions. But what's been happening with the NRA and with these, I'm going to be delicate here, people out there who are trying to advance an agenda is frankly disgusting. There's an interesting piece up with the Daily Wire. You know that after a tragic incident, there are some agenda folks who want to move stuff forward that has very little to do with the safety and security of our kids, our homes, our families, and has everything to do with their agenda. And they want to paint the NRA as some kind of a horrible accomplices in murder organization, which I think is frankly pretty disgusting. Mm-hmm. What I find even more fascinating is some of the same people who say that willingly send money to Planned Parenthood, an organization who is absolutely committed to keeping the termination of human life a big business for themselves. Kind of amazing how that happens. But there's a Daily Wire piece about some of the disparities in financing, because you're hearing this a lot now, Joe. Oh, the NRA, they bought off the Republican Party. Ladies and gentlemen, they've averaged $2.2 million in spending since 1998, the NRA. $2.2 million in spending. So the facts matter? I'm just asking you guys, you listeners out there and ladies, the facts matter. I know they matter to you. That's why you're here. Let's go over some other numbers. Michael Bloomberg, 1 year of spending, $23 million. 1 year. Again, the NRA's averaged $2.2 million a year since 1998. The SEIU, Service Employees International Union, $28 million in 2008 to elect Barack Obama. $70 million in 2012. Folks, the NRA was 6% of spending, electioneering spending in the last election cycle with Trump. 6%. You really think they bought off the Republican Party? You know, holding them to a standard you don't hold others to is understandable for the left. But I know what the organization stands for. And if you are going to call them, or anybody associated with them, me included, accomplices to murder, that's pretty disgusting and filthy, and you should be ashamed of yourself. Also, one other thing. You're going to start hearing these renewed calls for gun control, and you're going to hear some talk about Australia. Now, it's compliments of my friend Matt Palumbo and his friend Cody, some of the research they did. Here are some numbers. Australia engaged in a buyback program for guns. You had to turn in your guns, and they gave you money. So you'll hear the liberals, Joe, often tout Australia. Oh, Australia, what a success it was. Really? Yeah. Let me read to you. A 2011 study published in Justice Policy Journal compared the this is important, compared the trends in mass shootings before and after 1996, when gun control was enacted in Australia. It compared Australia and New Zealand. New Zealand is Australia's neighbor and is very similar socioeconomically. But unlike in Australia, Joe, it retained the legal availability of guns that were banned and confiscated in Australia in 1996. So just to be clear, 1996, Australia's gun ban goes into effect. New Zealand has a similar societal makeup. New Zealand does not have the gun ban. So this journal, this Justice Policy Journal, did a study. Now, if what liberals are saying that Australian gun confiscation, is such a success, you would think that Australia would see some significant difference in their gun violence in conjunction with New Zealand that did not have the gun ban, right?
Yeah, that's correct, Dan.
Oh, you'd be wrong, Joe.
Oh.
Of course, because I set you up and I wanted you to say that, of course. So it says it thus served as a useful control group to observe whatever effects gun control had on mass shootings. The authors of the study found that, after taking into account difference in population size, Australia and New Zealand did not have statistically different trends in mass shootings before or after 1996. Indeed, New Zealand has not had a mass shooting since 1997, despite the availability in that country of firearms banned in Australia. Here's another one. Sorry to read this to you folks, but this is important because you're going to hear about what a success. By the way, Australia has more guns now than they did before the 1996 gun control. Did you know that? Liberals won't tell you any of this. Here's another one by the American Medical Association, Joe, a far-right group, right? The American Medical. Yeah. I mean, let's be realistic, folks. This is the American Medical Association does not have a partisan leaning to the right. It says, what about firearm homicide rates? A 2016 AMA study, American Medical Association, examined trends in firearm homicides and suicides before and after the adoption of gun control in Australia in 1996. Folks, you interested in data or what? The authors found no evidence of a statistically existing downward trend of the firearm homicide rate. The AMA study did find a decline in firearm suicides following gun control, but noted there was a larger decline in non-firearm suicides, so the decline in firearm suicides could be part of a larger trend. Folks, let me read this one sentence again. The authors found no evidence of a statistically significant effect of gun control on the pre-existing downward trend of the firearm homicide rate. Now, why am I telling you this? Because, folks, the liberals who keep suggesting we follow this Australian gun confiscation pathway, what they seem to casually leave out of the argument here is that there is a very real penalty for others here. You will have a large majority of Americans who will be precluded from defending themselves with the firearm of their choice, legal firearm of their choice. Do you understand that? This is what, I don't know if I'm being clear on this show.
Yeah, you are.
The data does not support the fact that these gun bans or confiscation routines work at all.
Right.
You act as if doing it is, quote, doing something. But doing something is doing something malicious to someone else, which is taking away their right to defend themselves with no evidence that you're doing anything to make anyone else any safer. Do you understand now why, I discussed this a little bit in last week's show too, why people like us are so upset at the left? Because you keep talking about doing something, but what you talk about doing, you have no evidence to show actually works to do what you say it's going to do. And at the same time, you are stopping me from defending myself how I choose to do it. That's why this argument never goes. By the way, as you call us accomplices to murder, murdering thugs, and you basically hammer us on social media. Folks, does the data matter or not? It's pretty clear that criminals will access weapons when and where they see fit. They get them through black market channels. I was a cop. I told you when I used to work the cells as a police officer, I would ask criminals arrested for CPW, criminal possession of a weapon, how'd you get the gun? They'd be like, how'd I get the gun? What are you, an idiot? You just buy it on the street. How'd you get the gun? They're like, what are you, a dope?
Yeah.
Folks, I'm not kidding. I would ask them because I was genuinely curious. Criminals don't care. They have no problem at all. The black market for the hundreds of millions of guns that exist in the world is a vibrant one. Banning guns will do nothing but keeping legal gun owners away from accessing the firearm of their choice, legal firearm of their choice, to defend themselves. It will do nothing. Criminals have no problem at all getting guns. Until you accept that premise, the argument will never go forward. All right, folks, thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Please go to the show notes today at Bongino.com and check us out and join my email list. I'll send you these articles, some really good ones today, so be sure you read them. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all tomorrow.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. Get more of Dan online anytime at conservativereview.com. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 at DBongino.